I just want to put this into perspective. When we had Cyclone Winston in 2016, within 36 hours, 1/3 of the value of our GDP got wiped out. 1/3 of the value of our GDP. Now that puts into perspective the magnitude of climatic events that we as Pacific Islanders and indeed as Fijians actually face. Subsequently, we paid out $125 million for the first time ever when we had a Help for Homes program, where we assisted individuals who had lost their homes. If they lost their homes completely, we gave $7,000, $3,500 for partial damage, and $1,500 for those who lived on other properties. There's also a challenge that a lot of people lived on lands which they did not actually own or did not actually have a lease over, but they lived on what we call Vakavanua arrangements. So in other words, the tendency that they had was predominantly at will. So your ability to also assist them fully was very limited. We subsequently had 3 cyclones, Josie, Kenny, and Gita, in which we again helped to the tune of $110 million for those people whose homes were damaged either through floodwaters, rainwaters, and wind. This type of assistance actually is unsustainable. We've had 14 cyclones since then. As I've said in recent times, when I was a young kid, I remember there was a Cyclone Bibi, some of you are old enough to know that, in 1972. The next big cyclone came 10 years after that. Today, we get 3 cyclones in one season. If you don't get one cyclone, it's such a big deal. That's how significantly things have changed. So, when the Fijian government actually started talking about trying to address the issue of climate change, its impact on the Fijian economy, on the Fijian people, we had to be very innovative, not just in terms of developing products, but also developing relationships with multilateral agencies on a bilateral basis with our development partners to come up with solutions. You saw earlier on the board we had Luxembourg contributed to some of the initiatives that we are currently carrying out in the Climate Change Division. We've had Terry from India, the Australian government, the New Zealand government, and various other partners, and of course now the UN. Helping us develop products. To develop such a product is not necessarily very easy. We have the issue of reinsurers. Reinsurers predominantly sit in countries that are not vulnerable to climate change in the way that we are, the magnitude that we face. They may be sitting somewhere in Switzerland, they're sitting somewhere else, one of those what we call the metropolitan cities. So the ability to comprehend what we're doing and the way that they assess risk is very different. In the same way, if somebody's sitting in a head office somewhere else outside of Fiji and looking at risk from a banking financial perspective. So it is not actually an easy task. So I would like to thank the UN actually for developing this product and the various other partners that have been involved. And we cannot develop these products without the input, without the contribution, and indeed the understanding of the private sector. In this particular case, of course, we've had Sun Insurance and Fiji Care that have participated in providing this product together, working with the UN. The other point that I wish to also make is the capacity for a product and indeed a jurisdiction to have digital capacity, to be able to deliver those products. Not only in terms of accessing information, collaboration of data, gathering data to be able to assess your risk, but also in terms of payments. Because as has been highlighted by the 2 people who spoke, who are now part of this scheme, is that after a disaster, you need access to those funds almost immediately. So ability to deliver that obviously must be digitally based. We've recently shown during COVID, and just to sort of digress slightly as we were talking earlier on, we launched this particular product exactly 1 year ago digitally during COVID. Of course, we are now gathered in this room without masks. and we are able to interact with each other. But during that period, of course, we rolled out something like $430 million in unemployment assistance. Apart from the about $220 million paid out through FNPF that government paid out, the balance of it, the one round of $90, the two rounds of $50, the two rounds of $360, all applications were made on the phone, and all payments were made on the phone. So the digital capacity was critically important. People not having to form long queues, go up to various offices, catch a bus to go to the DO's office, or go to Provincial Administrator's office, or go to the Ministry of Social Welfare. They all did it from the comfort of their homes. And they all received the payment in the comfort of their homes. So these are essential ingredients in respect of rolling out such products. We, of course, as a government, recognize that, as I highlighted, it's not necessarily easy to roll out these products. We need everybody's collaboration. We are glad that now we have 5,000 individuals that have signed up to this particular product. Government has also, through the budget, removed VAT to be able to, for this particular product. So it becomes a lot more affordable. As also highlighted by Sanaka, we're now paying the premiums for those vulnerable people who are social welfare recipients, about 2,000 of them, who are living in areas that are far more prone to these climatic events, whether it's flooding, whether it's winds. And of course, we need to be able to build the number of beneficiaries, because the more people there are, the more attractive it becomes, and hopefully bring down the premium cost. Because if the pool of insured people becomes enlarged, then the risk as far as the insurer is concerned is slightly less. And the exposure for them is less. So therefore it is in our interest to ensure that it does expand. This, of course, I'd like to also remind some of you may not know this, but we also started what we call the micro-insurance program. The dairy farmers, the sugarcane farmers, the copra farmers, the rice farmers. For basic what we call micro-insurance, so if somebody dies in the family, the insured person, the families actually benefit from it. For funeral expenses, if there's a fire, the home catches fire, there's also fire insurance. They're not astronomically large sums of money, but they're good sums of money for the amount of money that you pay as premium, which is $52 in a year. And you can get up to $3,000 for fire insurance. A lot of farmers have now signed up for this. That, coupled with this now parametric insurance, gives a range of protections for those most vulnerable. And that's critically what we are working on. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to make the point that we've... sorry, just give me a second. The other point I want to make, which also Sanaka talked about, is the expansion of the actual product itself, to cover flood waters and also the inundation through various other climatic events. I'd like to once again acknowledge the Australian and New Zealand governments. They are represented here for their input, for supporting the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program. This, of course, we can also take a leaf out of this page for the rest of the Pacific Island countries, because if this is successfully launched, it can actually become a pilot program, if you like, for the rest of the Pacific, where they themselves can actually roll out these products into their own countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, without saying anything further, it gives me much pleasure, of course, to launch this particular product. I'd like to thank all those who have been involved in this. This is a growing area. We want to get a lot more of a nuanced approach to developing the products. A bit more sophistication is required, and of course, we ask all the development partners who are here, including our bilateral partners, to be able to use their convening power to convince many of the reinsurers, because ultimately they are the ones who will determine how accessible these products are and the actual cost of these products. And we, in fact, following Glasgow last year, we met up with, for example, Lloyd's Insurance. We understand they'll be here soon, or this week, or next week actually. And we hope to further those discussions. And it can only be through an appreciation of what we are going through and our requirements that we'll be able to provide a lot better coverage for ordinary Fijians, and that is, of course, our objective, and that's why we're here. Thank you very much.